As we were waiting, I just want to make a small announcement. If you have a cell phone or any type of noise-making device, please take a moment to turn it on silent, unless, of course, you're using it to help connect some of the family members. Unfortunately, we did have a little bit of a technical difficulty. We were not able to do the original live stream. Just if anybody asks, there will be a recording of the service available later this evening on our website. So we are going to be recording this.
We're all staying muted over here, meaning me and Nina.
And we're now going to begin the service for Mrs. Marilyn Zuckerman. Officiating today's service is Marilyn's grandson, Rabbi Shmuel Zuckerman. And we'll begin with the ancient tradition of Kriya.
First make a decision. On the left side. Left side of the top.
Check your shirt.
Oh, boom. You can go a little further. There, now grab it. Grab your right hand. My right hand. Yeah. First say Baruch Atah. Right. Try again. There you go. A little bit more. Good. Sure. Kapitel Chav Gimel, Psalm 23. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai Roi Balachzar, Binos Deshi Abitzeni, Amei Benuchos Yinaleini, Nafshi Yishovev, Yancheni B'maglei Tzedek, L'man Shemo, Gam Ki Elech B'geit Hamaves, Lo Yirara Ki Ata Imadi, Shivtecho Mishantecha Hima Yinachamuni, Taroch Lefanai Shulchan Neged Tzarurai, Dishanta B'Hashem En Roshi Kosi Revaya, Ach Tov V'Chesed Yirdefuni Kol Yemei Chayai, V'Shavti B'Beis Adonai L'Orech Yamim. A Song of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. God causes me to lie down in green pastures. God leads me beside tranquil waters. God restores my soul and guides me in righteous paths for God's name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your scepter and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in full view of my adversaries. You've anointed my head with oil, my cup runs over. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for the length of days. We'll be hearing from children today. We'll be hearing from grandchildren today. Abba.
When I was in school, elementary school, high school, college, I never heard my mother tell me to do my homework. I never heard her tell me to study, and I came home with report cards that were D's and F's. Only thing I ever heard was, "You're a bright boy, I have confidence in you." She never tried to force me to do anything. And I think the reason was very clear from the way she spoke, that she had respect for every person's free will, and she didn't want to interfere in the least with someone else's free will. I think it's expressed very clearly in Rashi's explanation of the pasuk we read yesterday, where Hashem told Moshe, "Kach es ha-levim," take them. Rashi says, "Kachenim b'dvarim." Take them with words, encourage them, Rashi says. How does Rashi know that's the pshat? How did Rashi know that's the explanation? Maybe Hashem meant take them. So the Maral says, because it would have been disrespectful to their free will to any way interfere with them making the choice. Just encourage them. That's it. My mother expressed this in very many ways. She expressed it in her special expressions of gratitude for people who did things for her. She expressed it in trying to be careful as much as she could, not to overburden me. She knew I had a mitzvah of kibbutz. She could have asked me to do many things. And yet she was careful as much as she could not to ask me to do things, as much as she could. She expressed it in her own self-respect. I remember even when she was very ill, it was hard for her to feed herself. And she would have this little bit of food with a spoon, and the aide would come over to try to take it and feed her. She would pull back. Try to feed myself as much as I can. She expressed it in trying to make proper choices. My mother was a world-class classic pianist. From the age of 12, she gave piano concerts with a full orchestra at Town Hall in Manhattan and on the radio. She played some of the most difficult pieces in public. My father and my mother got married, and that was the end. No more concerts. I have a responsibility in my family. That was it. She didn't stop playing again until she moved here to Chicago. May her memory be an inspiration for all of us.
Aunt Judy is Aunt Lori first. Aunt Lori's going to be speaking to us from afar. She's unable to be here in person, but you'll be able to hear her shortly.
I hope you can hear me. Can y'all hear me?
Go ahead.
Shmuel, can you hear me?
Yep. Yes. We can hear you, Aunt.
Okay, thank you. For many years, I was frightened of my mom. She could be mean and hurtful and judgmental. It wasn't until very recently that I could see that she was that way to herself. She second-guessed everything, worried about everything, was often living out of her fearful self, afraid of hurting people and of being hurt, wanting to love and be loved. Kind of like all of us. But she wasn't worried and fearful all the time. Mom was an artist, creative, always learning. When she took an interest in something, she gave it her all. She read, studied, practiced, experimented. Starting with playing the piano, Mom was incredible. Watching Mom at the piano was beautiful, extraordinary. She was that talented, that skillful. I remember when I was a kid, Mom was giving a concert for Women's American Art, by which I mean that there was an Art fundraiser and people made a contribution to Art in exchange for getting to attend a Marilyn Zuckerman concert. The pieces I remember for that concert were Ballywock's Cakewalk and The Great Gates of Kiev, and she practiced them all the time. Sometimes she'd play the whole piece, other times she'd replay one or two measures over and over until she got them the way she wanted them. Mom's love of music spilled over into ballet, opera, the symphony. She had subscriptions to the Met, the New York City Ballet, for as long as I can remember. And from time to time, she took us kids, hoping we would become avid patrons of the arts and get as much joy as she did. But not only music. Later in life, Mom studied horticulture. She was a volunteer gardener at one of the historic mansions on Long Island, and she developed her own beautiful garden in her backyard. She bought many different versions of daylilies and then bred her own. And one year she received top prize for best lilies on Long Island. Mom loved doing needlework. When I was a child, she made many of my clothes and knitted scarves and afghans, and then later in life, Mom made personalized Hollis bags for almost every adult and child in her ever-growing family. Mom told me recently that the best job she ever had was as a music counselor at camp. She loved producing and directing shows, and I can see that in her. Had Mom been born in another era, had she been part of a later generation that was more accepting of women's skills and success, she might have thrived in a way that wasn't possible for her generation of women born in the 1920s. Everyone at this funeral knows that our mom was not perfect, and she could be difficult. But she was also beautiful, and she made music and planted gardens for many to enjoy. Much later in her life, Mom found joy. For many years, she modeled how to age well. We were all privileged to watch and learn from her. At the very end of Mom's life, she and I forgave each other and expressed our love for each other, openly and vulnerably. I'm grateful that she was my mom. I love you, Mom.
I may have a somewhat unique perspective on Mom. I was her late-in-life child. When I was born, Mom was almost 42 years old. By that time, Mom was a seasoned veteran in the motherhood department. She would say things like, "Ask me a yes question." Things were maybe a little different, but not too much. Mom was born Marilyn Claire Gold on December 23, 1927. Her parents were Esther and Victor. She was named for Manny Shellamson, her mother's only brother, who died as a young man very shortly before Mom was born. Her early memories were of the Great Depression, when food was scarce. She had a sister, Roberta, who was about 4 years younger. I think she must have had an old soul all of her life. Marilyn and Roberta grew up in Brooklyn in a red brick house shared by her Bubba and Zeta at 351 East 46th Street. And then their family moved to a 6-family house at 383 to 385 East 46th Street. They lived on the first floor rear apartment. She told me her mother could be hard on her, but her grandparents doted affection on her. She finally remembered going on Sunday adventures with her father to see Something Wonderful and beach days in the Rockaways. Marilyn learned to play the piano. She attended the Henry Street Settlement Music School and later the prestigious High School of Music and Art. She practiced every day. Her mother would say, "Play, Marilyn." And she did. She became a wonderful musician. She played at Carnegie Hall when she was 10 years old. She particularly loved romantics like Chopin and Beethoven and Debussy and Mendelssohn. One of my favorite memories of her is of family gatherings when she would play the piano and we would all stand around and sing together. It could be Broadway show tunes, Italian arias, patriotic songs that she loved, American Songbook of the 30s and 40s, or Hasidic memories. Her life was very much in music. After attending Queens College and getting her master's degree at Columbia Teachers College, she became an elementary music teacher at the Yeshiva of Flatbush. She especially loved teaching children about the emotions carried by different sounds. To me, Mom was always a teacher at heart, and she loved to share her knowledge on various subjects. Dad called her Marigold. It was a perfect nickname because her name was Marilyn Gold, but also because she was strong and vibrant and layered. They were married on July 18, 1951, while Dad was on furlough from the Army. He had 4 children. I remember Mom being ever present when I came home from school. She was a stay-at-home mom and occasionally gave piano lessons at the house. She sewed all my clothes as a little girl. She knitted and crocheted and did needlepoint. She made beautiful needlepoint Tallis bags for her grandchildren. She was a wonderful nursemaid when I was sick, bringing juice and tea and reading me stories like Heidi and Call of the Wild. She was an excellent cook and loved making big holiday meals. She sometimes experimented with a new recipe to use what was in the fridge, tempting us with dishes like gefilte lasagna or peanut butter meatballs. She was organic and all natural before it was fashionable. She made everything from scratch. She loved to laugh, and I remember watching TV episodes of I Love Lucy or All in the Family with her and just laughing. She took me to see Fantasia and old Charlie Chaplin movies. She loved to watch Masterpiece Theater classics like Oliver Twist or Nicholas Nickleby, old mystery stories. She believed in luck and the power of Mother Nature. We had special days in the city seeing the New York City Ballet, or an opera or a Broadway show, or going to a street fair, or looking at the magical holiday displays in the Saks Fifth Avenue windows in the wintertime. She would arrange a girls' day with the family to see a special show. She had a special talent in the garden, and some years grew her own lettuce, tomatoes, snap peas, and of course her prized daylilies. She loved nature. She loved to visit New Hampshire in the summers, where she would go to see the Old Man in the Mountain or climb Mount Washington. And here she was once a Boy Scout den mother. She prioritized Yiddishkeit. She made us life members of Hadassah. She volunteered for Women's American Art. We marched in solidarity for refuseniks by the United Nations. We marched in celebration of the State of Israel down Fifth Avenue. She sang in the Plainview Jewish Center Choir. Her favorite holiday was Sukkot. She taught us Roshan Case Mitmanlin and Oifin Pripyat. She prioritized family, keeping in touch with cousins far and wide, and making time to visit family in New Hampshire, Florida, and elsewhere. Some words to describe Mom. Unconventional, stubborn, strong-willed, misunderstood, old-fashioned, unapologetic, reminiscing, loving, teacher, storyteller, opinionated, nonconforming, Zionist, patriotic, honorable, intelligent, artisan, musician, survivor. She was so proud of each of her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She made a special point in telling us that she loved us because it was important to her that we felt that we were loved and special and unique. Mom and I often didn't agree, but that's okay. She wanted her children to have a good life, but with a little grit. She tried to be the best mother she knew how to be. In her 94 years on this earth, she saw many things change and evolve through the 20th and into the 21st century. She learned to accept some things that she could not change. For other things, she would say, "This too shall pass." I will miss her dearly.
Thanks, Ian.
In a few weeks from now, we will be leaning Parshas Balak, the weekly Torah portion of Balak. Bilam, the king of Midian, was afraid of the Jewish people and hired Balak to curse the Jews. Balak, despite being quite eager to do so, was unable to curse the Jews. Instead, God only allowed him to praise the Jewish people. The Torah tells us that one of the praises that Balak gave was Ma Tovu O Alecha Yaakov, Mishkenochecha Yisrael. Literally, this means, how great are your tents, Yaakov, and how great are your dwelling places, Yisrael. This Sforno explains that when Balak was praising the tents, he was referring to the Batei Medrash, the study halls of Torah. And when he was praising the dwelling places, he was referring to the Batei Knesios, the shuls. The Sforno continues that Balak was saying that these yeshivos and shuls don't just benefit those that are learning and davening, but rather they benefit the entire nation. Although Grandma did not have the benefit of a religious upbringing and never had much of a Torah education, she understood how vital Torah study and prayer was for the continuity of the Jewish people. Not only were she and Grandpa very instrumental in the founding of shuls, of yeshivos, she always had the utmost respect and appreciation for shuls, for yeshivos, and for those that were learning and davening in them. Over the years, whenever any of us would see Grandma, she would always ask, "What are you learning?" And when she asked that question, she was not just being polite. Rather, it came from a genuine interest and appreciation for Torah study, as Grandma would not only listen intently to what we would answer, but she would ask questions and try to really understand. For the last number of years, when she and Grandpa lived here in Chicago, she welcomed any and all of Abba's current and former Talmidim, Torah students, into her apartment every single Shabbos, just about, to learn Torah together. There were plenty of weeks that I was quite crowded in there, with extra tables and chairs added, and Grandma just sitting there and smiling. Years ago, when they lived in Plainview, very purposefully, just a block over from a shul, Young Israel of Plainview, we would go there for Shabbos. We would go there for visits. And this respect carried through then as well. The minute we walk in the door, up would come boxes of cups, spoons, pots that were for standards that were what we had wanted and our standards. And she very respectfully kept them, and she bought them, and she was so respectful of the fact that we wanted to go the extra mile. And she just helped us and acknowledged that in such a happy way. Grandma, as you are going now to the world of truth, as you're going to the yeshivos and shuls in heaven, please continue to pray for us. Pray for our family, for the children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, for our continued success in life.
So, yeah.
With Grandma's Patira, we lost not only our Bubby, but our connection with the generations she remembered for us and represented to us. A generation that struggled and fought against the odds to bring Torah to a barren wasteland. We lost our ability to see the glint in her eye as she told of Simchas Torah in the 1930s with her flag, an apple, and a candle, or her cousin's hotel in New Hampshire where the Satmarov would vacation. Grandma may not have had formal education, a formal Torah education, but she had an internal love of mitzvos and the memory of her Baba and Zeta. It has been said that every person needs someone in their life who is irrationally crazy about them. For many of us, Grandma was one of those people. Every interaction was filled with so much love. Every time she would speak to us, we just felt so much love, and when she would give advice, we just felt how much she just wanted the best for us. When we would speak to her, we always felt like $1,000,000. Azriel, how's your learning? But she wouldn't take for an answer just good. She wanted to know what we were learning. And after you explained a little of the sugya, whatever it was, she would say, what you're doing is so important. To Grandma, I was someone who was worthy of being loved. These last 10 years or so that she spent in Chicago gave us an amazing opportunity to watch Ima and Abba do Kibbut Abba Aim with every hitter. Grandma and Grandpa could have asked for anything, and Ima and Abba would be instantly available. The Torah's Havtacha Barichos Yomim should be Mukayim. But it was also an opportunity to just be around and experience her love. She loved when we would come for Simchas Torah, or just the Shabbos Kiddush. She loved the Shabbos Miros and participating in Divrei Torah. In fact, in recent times, she started learning Mesilas Yesharim, a sefer of growth that is daunting even in one's years. She started in her 90s. Grandma, you loved us so much, and you believed in us. And we just wanted to make you proud. We're going to keep making you proud, and we know that you're rooting for us.
With a great feeling of loss, we say goodbye to Grandma. Hashem only gives a person a few grandparents, and Grandma was the last one I had. Grandma was a link to another world. Hearing her talk by looking at her window and seeing the Hasidim dancing was a connection to the Jewish community of the 30s and the 40s, and to our great-grandparents and their parents. There is so much we miss, but so much we have. When I think of Grandma, I think of the love and the care she had for me. By Pesach, it was Aziz and Pesach. In Rosh Hashanah, she would shower a year's worth of brachos, and it always ended with the hope that we'd take care of ourselves, watch where we walk, and not chip on any stones. She was so proud of her children, so proud to show me Dave's newest campaign handout, so proud of her children and her great-grandchildren. A few months ago, we had a conversation where she wanted me to make a certain decision that I didn't think was right for me at the time. She followed up the conversation with a letter. All letters from Grandma said love and kisses, but she sent me a long one. It started with be brave, it ended with I love you and hope for the best for you, and the middle was full of encouragement and support. It meant a lot to me then, and it is still meaningful for me to read. Every phone call ended with I love you, but recently she had a harder time having a conversation on the phone. The end of the phone call, though, got longer and longer. She repeated it several times, many times. Again and again, Grandma said, I love you. Grandma, we will miss you. We will miss your love and your care. As we move on and use what you gave to us to give to others, you will grow along with us. May Hashem bring the day when all death and sorrow is forever removed.
I want to ask Rabbi Allen, Rabbi of Park Plaza, to please read for us.
Eishes Chayil Miyimsa, Rachel Pimini Mikra, Batach Bale Bala, Vishalal Lo Yechsar, Lasu Tovu Lo Ra Kol Yemei Chayeha, Darshat Semer, Ufishtin, Vitaas Bechibet Kapeha, Haisa Chanio Socher, Mimerchak Tavi Lachma, Atakum Beo Laila, which is in Teref the Besa, Bechok Lenaro Seha, Zama Sada Bikikachehu, Bipri Kapea, Nata Karim, Chagra Be Oz Masne, Vitames Roseha. Ta'ama ki tov sachra, lo yichbe b'layla neira. Edeha shocha b'kishor b'chapea tamchu fa'alich. Chapa parsa la'ani yadeha shocha le'avyon. Osira le'besa mishala ki kol besa lavus shanim. Marvadim asasala sheish v'argaman levusha. Noda b'sharim ba'ala b'shivto im ziknei aretz. Sadin asasa v'timkor v'chagar nasna l'knani. Oz v'hadar levusha Tischak Yom Acharon. Pia Pascha B'Chachma B'Toras Chesed Al Yishona. Sophia Halichos Besa Lechem Atzlus Lo Sochal. Chama Baneh Vayashua Ba'ala Vayahalva. Rabos Banos Asu Chayo V'At Alis Al Kulana. Sheker Achain V'Hevel Hayofi Isha Yurat Adonai Hi Tisala. Tinula Mi Pri Yadeha V'Yalua B'Sharim Masah.
Jonathan?
An accomplished woman, who can find? Far beyond pearls is her value. Her husband's heart relies on her, and he shall lack no fortune. She repays his good, but never his harm, all the days of her life. She seeks out wool and linen, and her hands work willingly. She's like a merchant's ships, from far, she brings her sustenance. She rises while it is yet nighttime and gives food to her household and a ration to her maidens. She envisions a field and buys it. From the fruit of her handiwork, she plants a vineyard. With strength she girds her loins and invigorates her arms. She discerns that her enterprise is good, so her lamp is not snuffed out by night. Her hands she stretches out to the distaff, and her palms support the spindle. She spreads out her palm to the poor, and extends her hands to the destitute. She fears not snow for her household, for her entire household is clothed in scarlet wool. Luxurious bedspreads she made herself, linen and purple wool, her clothing. Distinctive in the councils is her husband, when he sits with the elders of the land. She makes a cloak to sell and delivers a belt to the peddler. Strength and majesty are her raiment. She joyfully awaits the last day. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and a lesson of kindness is on her tongue. She anticipates the ways of her household, and partakes not of the bread of laziness. Her children arise and praise her husband, and he lauds her. Many daughters have amassed achievement, but you surpass them all. False is grace, and vain is beauty. A God-fearing woman, she should be praised. Give her the fruits of her hands, and let her be praised in the gates by her very own deeds.
I had mixed feelings about officiating today. I kind of wanted to just be a grandchild one last time. And then I realized that I could do that. For you, Grandma, I'll even give this. So please bear with me as I try to step out of the role of officiating for just a few minutes and allow myself to be here with Grandma, just a Shmuley. There are only two people in the world who called me Shmuley. I think the first was Grandpa, and I think Grandma followed shortly after. I don't know why, but that's what they called me. And I really just want to share a few memories when I got to know Grandma. It was really in my adult years. It was going back 15 years or so. I was recently married. Toby was a baby. Grandpa had just gotten sick. He had just recently been diagnosed with Parkinson's. And every Friday afternoon, right after yeshiva was over, I would bundle Toby into the car. Shirley didn't mind. Got Toby out of the house for the afternoon. And I would drive an hour or so out to Plainview, hang out with Grandma and Grandpa for about 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and drive back. And that went on for, as I recall, several years. I followed them to their senior community for 55 plus people. They thought they could join at 80 or so. That didn't last very long. And then later to the Atlantic Beach, the Nautilus, until they moved to Chicago. And I think it was really in those organic times that I really got to appreciate Grandma. As it's been said, and I really want to echo it, and that was Grandma's love for all learning. No matter what you were learning, no matter what you were doing, whether it was formal education, informal education, theology, Torah, art, sciences, she didn't care. What are you learning? I could even imitate it. What are you learning? What are you learning? If you've ever met Grandma, you know that was exactly the way she said it. And she really wanted to know, and she really affirmed it. And it didn't matter if you were learning, a new dance or a new art or a new science. It was all important to her. You were learning how to swim? Wonderful. You were learning. And as we were reading the Torah yesterday, it occurred to me that the sharp criticism, which we read about yesterday, that at least in one incident, the Jewish people are likened to school children running away from school. Grandma was the exact opposite. What are you learning? She just wanted to know. And she really affirmed it and valued it. I was thinking after that, if you were going to colonize an outer country that didn't have any humans on it, or if you were going to go to outer space, just bring Grandma's grandchildren along and you'll be set. From every art, science, discipline, medical, whatever you need, if you bring Grandma's grandchildren, you're set. You've got one of everything at least, and probably two or three. And I think that was really powerful, experiencing Grandma's kind of pursuit of it. She wanted to know. And she really kind of valued all and every education and everything you were doing. The other thought which I want to reflect about Grandma is, I believe it was at Aunt Judy's wedding, when I probably saw Grandma the most emotional that I have ever seen her in my life. And I believe it was while Sunrise Sunset was being played. Because I think I learned to understand that Grandma understood that on a very personal level. She was born in the Depression, lived through World War II. I don't know all the stories. Honestly, I don't think anybody knows all the stories. But I think Grandma was able to experience sunrises and sunsets, and when the sun set, to know that the sun would yet rise again. And that was perhaps my understanding of what Grandma was experiencing. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but that's definitely something which I saw in Grandma, and I think it's something we can all take with us. Grandma was earthy in a lot of ways. Probably her favorite place in the world was a garden. And I have this remarkable memory of her taking Toby out into the garden one day. It was probably a Friday afternoon when we were there. I think they went picking strawberries. And she gave Toby a basket, and Toby followed her around. And they came back into the house, and there was not a single strawberry in the basket. And Grandma was tickled pink. Her great-granddaughter had eaten all the strawberries along the way, and nothing could have made Grandma happier. Everything she had, she shared with others, and she was just so happy that, someone could enjoy it together with her. Grandma, there's one more garden. This one you don't have to tend. There's angels there waiting to tend for you. No more gardens on earth, Grandma. The next garden is the Garden of Eden. May death be wiped away forever, and may the Lord God wipe away a tear from every face. In just a moment, we're going to continue with the Kel Male, the memorial prayer. But I want to take a moment to consider the spirit of those who made valiant and Herculean efforts to be here today, and physically are unable to, but whose spirits I can still feel in the room here today. And I invite you all to be mindful and to think of those as well. I'm thinking of Uncle David, Cousin Eric and Sarah, Aunt Lori, Uncle Steve, Jen and Leslie, Uncle Larry, Rena and Sammy. See, Donnie made it. David and Miriam, my siblings, who also were unable to make it. And Grandma, they're all here with you in spirit. The Talmud teaches that you are still well aware of your environment. And we want to be aware of the environment, not just in a physical sense, but in a metaphysical one as well. I ask you all to rise. El Mole Rachamim Meshochain Bamiromim Hamtzei Menucha Nechona Al Kanfei Ashchina B'malos Kedoshim Utarim Kezoar Harakia Mazirim Es nishmas chayom mina bas Rebbe Victor Alevi shelcha liolama ba'avur shanachnu mispalalim baras karas nishmasa B'gan Eden tehei menuchasa L'chein bal harachamim yastireha b'seiser k'nafav li'olamim V'yitzror achayim es nishmasa Adonai hu nachalosa v'sanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar amen. I'm going to invite the grandchildren to come forward. Take Grandma to our final resting place.
Pallbearers, just hold on one moment before we escort Ms. Zuckerman just down the road to the family plot. Shiva will be later this evening at Park Plaza, as well as later in the week at the Winston Tower, 7061 North Kennedy. That information is available on the service folder you received on the way in. If you did not receive one on the way in, there's more available on the way out. And if for whatever reason you need to reference that, it will be available on ChicagoJewishFunerals.com as well. Memorial contributions in Mrs. Zuckerman's memory can be made to the Chicago Chesed Fund. At this time, I'd ask you to remain standing as we have the grandchildren.
Psalm 91. Yoshev b'seisar al yom b'tzal shadai sona amal alamay machsim t'dosi elohayot ango kiyotzok v'cham yakush midar v'rabos v'rabosay yasach lach v'sachas k'navhav dechse tzina v'sachir ram yitor lo sirom pachal lo'elam v'cheish of yomam midevar ba'al yaloch miketev yeshut tzorah mipom mitzitcho alach v'vavam iminecha Elecha lo yigash rak beinecha sabi b'shul maser sharon tirek yato adonai machsi el yom samtum onecha lo tunei lecha ra'ah v'nega lo yikra ba'alecha ki Yoshev b'seisar al yom b'tzal shadai yisrael na'amar l'adonai machsi mitzudas yelavayim takok yiyatzilch mitach yakush midar v'rabos v'rabosay yasach lach v'sachas k'nafal techsa tzina v'sachir ram yitor lo sirom pachal lo'elam v'cheish of yomam Midever ba'al yaloch miketev yeshut tzorah mipom mitzitcho alach v'vavam iminecha Elecha lo yigash rak beinecha sabi b'shul maser sharon tirek yato adonai machsi el yom samtem onecha lo sunei lecha v'nega lo yikra ba'alecha ki malakav Yoshev b'seisar al yom b'tzal shadai sona amal adonai machsi mitzudas yelohayot takok yiyatzilch midever avos v'rabosay yasach lach v'sachas k'nafal techsa tzina v'sachir ram yitor lo sirom pachal lo'elam v'cheish of yomam Midever ba'al yaloch miketev yeshut tzorah mipom mitzitcho alach v'vavam iminecha Elecha lo yigash rak beinecha sabi b'shul maser sharon tirek yato adonai machsi el yom samtem onecha lo sunei lecha ra'ah v'nega lo yikra ba'alecha ki malakav